Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Now for today's video, I wanted to talk about John Hammond, the guy that is literally responsible for this entire cloned dinosaur brand that all of us love so much today. For the next few minutes, I'm going to go over everything in the history of this character that is true or canonical, and separate it from what is not. I think it's important to differentiate the reality in each character's backstory from what didn't factually happen in the wider canon. Comparing all of this information with the source material is what I personally believe to be the most honest way in which we can talk about an individual character. So in this video, I wanted to dive into the old man's backstory as it's told in both the novel and movie canons respectively. So John Hammond made his first official appearance in Michael Crichton's 1990 novel, Jurassic Park. Now in that first book, Mr. Hammond is a very different character compared to Richard Attenborough's portrayal in the Steven Spielberg movie. For starters, Book Hammond is kind of a mean guy. He's constantly throwing fits and getting angry about anything that doesn't go according to plan once the inspectors show up to Isla Nublar. He's also very arrogant in the novel, and doesn't exactly take no for an answer on anything that has to do with his Costa Rican resort. Of course, all of the billionaire's actions during the first story eventually result in a pretty pathetic death for the park owner. After falling down a small hill and injuring his ankle, John Hammond would soon be swarmed by a large group of compies, who'd stopped by at the perfect time to catch an easy meal.
And I said, one of the sad things I said is I've been robbed of my great death scene. He said, well, you may have been robbed of a death scene. You may not have been robbed of a sequel.
Now, we all know that Hammond did not die in the 1993 film, and in my opinion, that's a good thing. Because while I do think that the man's poetic justice is really cool in the book, I think that death scene worked even better after it was given to Dieter Stark in the second movie. Also, I kind of prefer Attenborough's kind old man demeanor to that of the angry, malicious Hammond from the books. So seeing him go out like that and not having him show up in the Lost World would have been kinda lame in my honest opinion. Speaking of the Lost World, this is the last physical appearance of the character in the entire film series. And even though he only bookends the film with a few interesting lines of dialogue, I personally find his performance to be a great highlight for the second movie. During the beginning of the film, we learn that John wants to send people over to Isla Sorna in order to gather proof that the animals exist in the modern world. He does this in order to protect the animals from the exploitation that was coming to them by means of his nephew. This kind of attitude is something that you really would never have seen in the first Crichton book, in which Hammond has a major role. So the Lost World happens to be something that I consider to be a great point of contrast when comparing the book and movie counterparts. Apart from the first two films that Hammond was in, his influence has of course been felt throughout the entirety of the Jurassic Park franchise, with references to his works in the previous films being noted in all three of the sequels that he didn't make a physical appearance in. However, none of them are as interesting or important as Hammond's role in Fallen Kingdom. In the fifth film in the franchise, we get to meet an elderly character who goes by the name of Benjamin Lockwood. Now in the beginning, it's said that Hammond and Lockwood built a custom lab in the sub-basement of Benjamin's estate, and actually extracted the first DNA from Amber there before moving on to create Jurassic Park. Now the reason this is such an important part of Hammond's history is because it's actually something that was taken directly out of Michael Crichton's original novel. Early on in the book, we get some information on the origins of the park, and in these formative years, it's said that John Hammond actually began his genetic research with his former business partner, Norman Atherton. Atherton would later have his name changed to Benjamin Lockwood for the Fallen Kingdom movie, but make no mistake, this guy is supposed to be filling in the same role. Colin Trevorrow has even spoken on record as saying that it was in this basement where another part of Crichton's original novel happened to take place.
In the basement of this house, Dr. Wu and John Hammond cloned the first baby elephants and then moved on to dinosaurs.
Fallen Kingdom's edition of Hammond's old business partner and the connection that this location has with he and Wu is something that I honestly never thought would ever get incorporated into the Jurassic film series, but lo and behold, it actually happened. This ties the film version of Hammond more into his novel counterpart than ever before, and it gives us a whole new world of possibilities for the further implementation of Crichton's works into the film canon. Now, for the longest time, the only information on Hammond's backstory that we'd gotten at all before Fallen Kingdom was an old PC game by the name of Jurassic Park Trespasser. And to put it bluntly, that game has never really lined up with any hard canon in the overarching film universe, because there are a giant amount of plot holes that it creates within itself when you compare it to both Jurassic Park and The Lost World. However, there are some things within the old game that have bled into the wider movie lore, specifically Hammond's assertion that he'd created 7 Tyrannosaurs on Site B.
Tyrannosaurus rex, tyrant lizard. They reigned for 25 million years. We grew 7 of them, the 7 rulers of the island.
While much of Trespasser doesn't make any sense as far as dates and documentation goes, I'd honestly love to see some more of this material worked into the larger lore in the near future, because it's honestly nothing short of incredible. While other people out there may get an image of Ian Malcolm, Alan Grant, or some other character when they think of Jurassic Park, I must admit that it's Hammond himself who I honestly feel like is the most sincere and symbolic figure in this entire franchise. Had there have not been a John Hammond in either iteration of Jurassic Park, whether it be book or film, I don't think that the story would be nearly as impactful. The reason I say this is because Hammond is a crucial part of the ethical debate that plays out in these stories. Take away Hammond and Malcolm would have no one to philosophically spar with in either of the earlier films. He's not only the man that's responsible for bringing the prehistoric animals back to life, in my opinion. I actually think he represents a viewpoint and sensibility that many honestly share when it comes to how they feel about dinosaurs, or even how they feel about the ethical questions that surround the dinosaurs in these movies. I'd consider him to be the true heart and soul of this franchise. Without Hammond, we'd be missing a serious ingredient in Jurassic Park's success. But anyway, this is really just the beginning of a further conversation that I'd like for all of you guys to join into as well. What are your thoughts on John Hammond in both of the canons that he's played a major role? Are you a bigger fan of the book interpretation, or are you someone who thinks that Richard Attenborough's performance is far superior? For me, it's always going to be the movie version, but I will say that the incorporation of Michael Crichton material is never a bad thing. In fact, it's something that every movie in this series needs to have, in my opinion. But whatever your own thoughts and personal opinions may be, I'd love to hear them in the comments down below. Now before I go, I want to thank all of my game wardens, as well as all of my InGen executives. I'd also like to thank all of my park workers and InGen hunters as well. Wes Mordine, David, and Ben Hall. Words can't really express how awesome it is to have you guys tell me how much you enjoy the stuff I do, and I seriously am extremely thankful for everything that you guys do to help. Honestly, it means the world. Now I'd like to thank you all for watching this video, and hope that you all enjoyed today's content. If you feel like I deserve it, I'd appreciate the like and hope that you'll consider subscribing if you're interested in hearing from me again. I'll see you all in the next video, guys, and as always, take it easy.